KFUG Community Radio, good morning, 5 minutes into the 10 o'clock hour. Paul Critz sitting in community service style today, special edition. We are joined by my reckoning, the last supervisorial candidate that we are responsible for having on the radio this year, I think, right? Is this it? Is there anybody we're missing?
I don't have anybody else booked. So that's it.
It's not the question but I think we're there.
This is everybody who's running right now.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So in that illustrious spot as the last supervisorial candidate for this election coming up March the 5th, which is, oh my gosh, next week, River Strown is joining us, candidate for Supervisor, Del Norte District 2. How you doing today, River?
I'm doing really
Rivers,
good.
Sorry.
Yes.
Do you get that a lot? Do you get River?
I do, yeah. People think River because they go, oh yeah, like River Phoenix.
Yeah, right.
And I say, no, I have an S. And they go, Rivers, but that's plural. I'm like, yes, that's for my many mental states. That I
the Rivers Drown.
Yeah.
So I want
multiple personalities. Anyway,
Relatable content.
I want to ask just right off the bat. We were talking about this. How'd you get the name Rivers Drown?
It's a great question. I tell people all the time. I say Rivers Drown. Yes, that's my name, and no, my parents were not hippies. Because these are all the questions that I get. Those are the most common.
Were they lifeguards?
What's that?
Were they lifeguards?
No, I don't think so. Not
Okay.
at any time that I remember. But the next question I get is, well, do you have any siblings? Yes, 2 sisters. Oh, well, what are their names? Cindy and Debbie. And they're like, such a letdown. You know, they're thinking like stream and, ocean or something.
Meadow,
it's
rainbow.
like, no, Cindy
Yeah.
and Debbie. They're much older. I say much older. I'm the baby. But no, I don't. No, they're older than me. My mom named them. My dad named me. So
Okay.
with the last name Drown. And I didn't even find out until a couple years ago when I flew down to Texas to visit him. I said, I've been asked this my whole life. Got to ask why did you name me that? And it turns out it's a neat story. He and my mother grew up in Ohio, and back in those days, you went down to the mom and pop store and got your bubble gum and your soda or whatever. And the store owner, his name was Rivers. And he just liked that guy and had a relationship with him, childhood friend, whatever, and looked up to him. And so he named me that. It just so happened the last name's Drown, so it makes people think,
Oh, that's interesting.
Really?
Yeah, so they weren't trying to make a pun or anything.
No, I don't think. No, he just named me after a guy he admired as a kid, and I'm like,
great.
okay, now at least I have a story.
Well, and it's a wonderful thing, as you pointed out right before we went live, that your name is a complete sentence.
Yes,
You got the subject, you got the predicate.
There you go.
there it is. Yeah, you put a period behind it and call it a day.
Well, okay, let's, the next basic question then is, because I can think of nothing more arduous or stressful or just running for a public office. You've had a long career. You're retired from a career in law enforcement, right? And then
Yes, I am.
Let's start with that. Let's go back. Let's talk about what you have done in your past lives as other Rivers.
Past lives, starting with moving here to Crescent City in 1988 as a freshman in high school.
Mm-hmm.
About a year or so later, I met my girlfriend, then wife now.
Oh, wow.
And graduated and went into the Navy. So 1992 was a big year for us. I tell people a lot happened. I graduated high school, joined the Navy, and married my wife. And so it was a busy year, but spent 4 years in the Navy. I was on an aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz.
Okay, I'm fascinated by Blake Inscore, City Councilman Blake Inscore, on, because he was on the Midway, and I had him on just to talk about that.
Oh, that's
What
great.
did you do? What did you do in the Nimitz?
I was in navigation department as what they call a quartermaster.
Okay.
For the Army, a quartermaster is something different. It's like supply. But
Yeah.
for the Navy, it's navigation.
Whoa.
And so I was in charge of charting. We had GPS for Uno when it was brand new, first
Right.
out. And we charted our courses, but I was also a Master Helms qualified person. So only 3 of us were Master Helm qualified. And what that meant was that we drove special sea and anchor details, such as like underway replenishments, driving in and out of port, or anything
Okay.
special. And to get that certification, you had to have 1,000 hours behind the helm at different categories of driving. So underway, in and out, over, underway replenishments, all those things, helicopter operations. So I did that and spent about 6 months in the Persian Gulf in 1993, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
And then 94, we came back in our to dry dock to get refurbished because Clinton at that time said he allowed women to come on combat vessels. So aircraft being a combat vessel, we had to get retrofitted for allowing females to be part of ship's company.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I got out in 1996.
Now, before we move on from that.
yes.
So Is it a big steering wheel? Do you
It
have
actually
what-
is.
Is it really?
It actually is. People think, oh man, any vision you would have of like an old World War II movie aircraft carrier,
Right.
That's exactly what it is. It has a big mahogany wood wheel,
Wow.
as the helm. And it's very, an aircraft carrier is what's called the flagship. And the reason why it's called the flagship for a battle group is because that's where the admiral of that battle group resides.
Right.
His quarters are actually one deck above us, above the bridge where
wow.
we operate. And so you actually do have the guided missile cruisers and the smaller ships. The helmsman actually sits in a chair and he controls the RPM, and he has like a little steering wheel. It's not nearly as, traditional as
Right.
an aircraft carrier.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted that. I wanted to understand that
Yeah.
part about it, the aircraft carrier. All right. So you drive around the Persian Gulf with the big wheel, and then you come back home, and then what happens for you?
So then I get out, and we moved back to Crescent City, and I started working for my father-in-law, who owned Two Guys Manufacturing.
Oh, yeah.
And so I worked for him as a welder and mufflers and doing the whole shot, but then realized that I wanted to have something a little bit more, challenging than that. And so the prison's here, of course, and I went ahead, and my father-in-law, with his mercy and his grace, he said, hey, go ahead and, shoot for it. And so I did. I tested for the prison, and I was able to get hired back in 1998 for the prison. And from there, spent 25 years, worked my way up to sergeant, had a lot of various interesting jobs while I was there. And I wouldn't trade that career for anything. There was, peaks and valleys like anything else.
Sure.
But overall, I had a great career, a lot of interesting things that I was able to take part in.
What sorts of things do you take away from a career like that? Because you've talked about, and I've read about the sorts of things you did inside, and it wasn't just being up in a tower. You were hands-on, sort of like out investigation and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I had pretty much done every job that a CO could possibly do at some point in time, and that's not uncommon. But finally, about 5.5 years into it, I was able to get on what's called the security squad at the time, and it's basically gang investigations, but also they're concerned about the security, the actual security of the prison. That means gates, fences, walls. If there are discrepancies, we find them and report them and get them fixed. But also, too, beyond that, the duties kind of merge into gang investigations. I was actually the narcotics officer. I had a K-9 for a small period of time, way before K-9s were actually approved. There was like 3 prisons in the state at the time that actually had approved K-9 units. So I like to tell people I had a K-9 before it was cool. Now there's K-9s in every prison, and they're company dogs and all of that. But we were cutting edge when it came to fighting crime here at Pelican Bay. Pelican Bay had a reputation for being the toughest on crime, the worst of the worst, that sort of thing, And, that has sort of diminished throughout these recent years. I would say since 2010, prison changed a lot to the point where I didn't even recognize it anymore compared to when I started, policy-wise and that sort of thing.
How so? Whether the closing of the shoe, things like that? Is it just
actually, yes. Just the way that we would, validate a gang member, it was very simple, and it was designed to be simple to get these gang members separated from general population because they were extremely dangerous. And so you'd have, a validation process and certain criteria that we had to meet, and we could get these guys separated, and with the viewing of their mail in and out of the prison, everything went through IGI. And if our guys got trained very well on how to intercept mail that was even coded, bringing narcotics in, making a hit on the street. These guys knew exactly what all of that meant in codes, and they could stop it.
Wow.
So essentially what you were doing is you were cutting these guys off from the world, which minimized crime on the streets and in the prison.
Right. Wow. So, okay, you retire from that, and we were talking about recent work with caring for lawns in Del Norte, which is sounds like the way you put it and all the things, all the thought that goes into it, sounds like a lot. Yeah. It's a lot to keep in mind. So now we're up to now. What possessed you to want to run for supervisor?
Well, I think it started about a year and a half ago. Still working at the prison, and I'm seeing the same things in the community that everyone else is seeing.
What sorts of things?
Well, we're seeing theft. Theft is at some of the highest rates we've even seen, and I personally have been victims of that. My father-in-law has been victims of that down at Two Guys down at the shop.
Oh, I bet.
And you just hear about it. We've been victims of crime, whether it's been all the way from graffiti of our vehicles to puncturing our tires on our travel trailer. And it's not just us; it's everyone else in the community. And you just see this going on, and you're thinking, okay, are they being held accountable? These people, are they being caught? Are they being sent to jail? All these things. And you start realizing, like, wow, what can I do other than stand on the sideline and shake my fist and be mad? I'm really good at that. I can be mad and be disgusted and all that. But the question then to myself, I'm asking, okay, what can I do about it? And so the obvious question to me or the answer to me would be to get involved. And so it just so happened that when I retired last June, it was just a few short months after that it was time to pull paperwork to run for the office.
Oh, wow.
We're coming up on the end of my opponent's term, and so it just seemed like the timing was perfect. So I look at that as kind of an open door to proceed, and so that's what I did. So I pulled papers, and next thing you know, seemed like the whole town knew that I'm running. Oh, so you're running? I'm like, okay.
Wow.
How did you? I'm still thinking, but So anyway, but why supervisor? That was the other question. Why? What makes supervisor? And again, it comes down to timing. But if you look at supervisor, what are they? They're a governing body that is in charge of ordinances and the goings on and the happenings that happen in this county. And what you realize is what happens in the county. It pretty much has to come across the desk of the supervisors. And so I realized that. I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to be able to have a voice at that table and just speak truth and common sense. And that's kind of what led me there.
What about your vision for Del Norte then? What is it you would like to, what sort of issues do you see? I mean, you mentioned crime, and I was checking today because I was reading about you before you came in.
Sure.
And so I was Googling and going on and looking. Yeah, our crime rates basically are twice the national average here for property crime and for violent crime. So how can a supervisor affect any change in that regard?
Well, I look at it like this. Anytime you have an endeavor, like losing weight, bodybuilding, the experts say you want to start off with short-term achievable goals, which then lead you into long-term achievable goals. So if you want to lose 5 pounds in 2 weeks, that's a short-term achievable goal that most people could do. But long-term goal would be, now I got to change my diet and I got to change my exercise so that I can, long-term goal is keep it off.
Right.
So I look at it like, okay, I have several short-term goals and I have long-term goals. Short-term goal number 1, get elected. That's goal number 1. And that, my campaign, my election, I feel is going very well. I've had great support in the community. Basically, I've done everything that, obviously this is new to me, so first go around. Signs are up, going door to door, handing out palm cards, and conversations that I'm having with people out on the street. I've gotten a lot of positive support for that. So it's been really good there. Get elected. Once elected, I want to establish a drug task force.
Now, you were part of the drug task force in the past, correct?
I was, yeah. That was part of my duties on the security squad, IGI. I was actually the drug task force liaison. And so the great thing about that is that I could work on the streets with officers, because as the narcotics officer in the prison, we all know that, it has a very close tie with what's happening in the community.
Yeah, right.
So that was very beneficial. 2010, backing up just a little bit in my history, 2010 I became a parole agent. And so I was a parole agent with it then called Region 2 out of Eureka. About a third of my caseload was Eureka, Humboldt, and then the other 2/3 was right here in Del Norte County. AB 109 happened, and that basically changed how prison works, and it streamlined a lot of programs. So basically the bottom line is, to make a long story short, is I got sent back to prison. So I always tell people I paroled, and I'm getting sent back. But I did. I ended up going back to the prison. They said if you didn't have at least 5 years in parole, you were going back. So thankfully they welcomed me back with open arms, came right back, and they made me the CERT commander, which is the SWAT team.
Wow.
And so I had many years on the SWAT team previous to that. So as commander, it was really good. From 2012 to 2016, I was the commander. And at that time, the Drug Task Force was being ran by Richard Griffin, who's now our police chief. And it was really good. We had it worked out. We had an MOU set in place that if he needed help, additional help, it was great. He could just call me up. I'd say, how many you need? He'd say, I need 5. You got them. And when he needed them, we were out there helping out. The great thing about that is it cost him 0.
Yeah.
It cost the county 0, because we are some of the best trained SWAT team guys in the state. And we have a reoccurring training program. We train every month, so having us out on the street was a huge asset. And plus, it gets the guys out of the prison. I'm fighting guys away. They're like, "Hey, that's no fair. Those guys went last time." I said, "Hey, man, the fair's in August, so deal with it then." And so I'm trying to manage it. But it was great because we were, with Griffin's investigations out on the street, he probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 successful search warrants.
I read that number today, actually.
And we got to help out in that, and it was really good. So the problem is this. That got disbanded. It stopped in around 2018, 2019, and we haven't had a drug task force since. What I tell people is nature sees a void and seeks to fill it. So what has it been filled with? Well, we're number 2 in the state, our county, for opioid overdoses.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Yeah.
And those are actually old numbers. They anticipate that actually could go up.
Yeah, with 2019, how far back do the numbers go?
That was 2021, 2022
Just that
statistics,
recently, okay.
I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
Can't quote me on that, but I believe that's what those are. So when those numbers are ran again, we could be number 1. The only reason we're not number 1 in this one is because Alpine County had 1 death, and they're so sparsely populated. They have like 1,200 and some people. So their 1 death per capita put them at number 1. But I tell people, basically, we are number 1. And that's frightening. How on earth could little Del Norte County be basically number 1 in opioid overdoses? Who's pushing this stuff? Who's bringing it? Who's selling it? Well, without a drug task force here to have those specific investigations, and these guys know what they're doing when it comes to finding out who is actually selling this stuff to our communities. It's not the addict that I'm concerned with as far as from a legal standpoint. I'm concerned about them. I definitely want help for them. We have programs that help these people to shake their addictions for sure, and we want to do that. What I'm interested in, who's selling it?
Right.
Who's bringing it?
You don't address the problem just taking the end away like that.
Exactly. You got to cut it off at the head. And so for my thing is we need to have a drug task force up and going, and that is another short-term goal that I have. But there's a problem. The problem is we don't have enough deputies.
Yeah.
And I've already had a meeting with the sheriff on this. Just so happens that my last 6 years at the prison, I was a recruiter for the state. So I was trained by the state in recruiting people to come to work for CDCR.
Wow.
And so I would go to job fairs. I would go to colleges. I've been to Southern Oregon University. I've been to Humboldt University. And go there with all of our doodads and all of our setup and everything, and I learned how to talk to people and how to get them interested in coming to work for the state. I have a plan on how to get deputies to be here, to work here.
Can you share that plan?
Sure.
Okay.
Plan number 1, what I talked to the sheriff about. Number 1, you have to hire local.
Yeah.
If you hire local people here, you're not worried every morning if they're going to wake up and say, you know what, I want to go back home after 6 months of working here. So if you hire local people, that means they already live here. They have families here. They're tied in. Hire people that can pass all of the prerequisites and all the testing and everything. Go to an academy, come back, and you already live here, and we have to pay them well. What I shared too was sign-up bonuses. You were to like $3,000 or $4,000 for signing up, right? Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's do
and
a sign-up
retention
bonus.
bonuses as well?
Retention as well. You have to have these things set in place. And the reason why a sign-up bonus is important is because you can attach things to them. Attach what? Well, a contract. Hey, you're going to give me 4 years here. And so a sign-up bonus, 3, 4, 5, whatever we can afford, that gets this person, if they're not local, well, I can move. I've got first and last, and it kind of ease the pain of coming here.
Yeah.
All right. Then, of course, with a higher salary, of course, an hourly rate, whatever the case may be, but as well, you need every November, give them a nice little shot in the arm and give them retention.
Uh-huh.
And I don't even care if it's $1,000. Look, that's going to help out with Christmas shopping.
Yeah.
It's going to let them know that, hey, we care about you. We can't do much, but we care about you and we're glad to have you. So here's another little help out at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing that builds morale. And I am a big person on morale. If you have good morale in your organization, your people are happy, they're going to stay.
Now, throwing these numbers out too, another thing I'd read is that you'd also spoken with Clint Shad about
Yes.
the availability of county funds to make that a reality, and that's something that we could do.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken with him about these things, and I'm not going to say that this would happen overnight. Some of these things have to be worked out, and there's actually an ad hoc committee right now that is chaired by Dean Wilson and also my opponent, Valerie Starkey. Mm-hmm. They are working on these things already. Now, whether their plan looks like mine, of course, they're in the chairs, so they're privy to a lot of information I don't have. But as an outsider looking in and having already spoken to the sheriff about my ideas, he was nodding in agreement, and he told me, he says, I like it. I like what I hear.
Wow.
So, if this information gets out and helps,
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with that. Mm-hmm. If Valerie Starkey and Dean Wilson and Scott come together and maybe incorporate some of this stuff, wonderful, let's do it. I'm not possessive on that. What I want to see is an army of deputies because we're running some shifts, we're running one deputy.
Right.
And that's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You think?
I'm good for now.
Okay, go. So we're talking about crime, I guess when I see somebody who talks a lot about law enforcement, and somebody like yourself coming from law enforcement, and yes, there is so much. I want to talk about the propositions that you oppose and you want to have repealed too, because they did change the scene in California markedly. Anybody can see that. But I guess I have a fear that somebody such as yourself with your background might look at the problems that we experience in Del Norte and because you're a hammer, see them as all as nails, like not address some of the causes that have put our population and people here into these sorts of situations. I understand public safety and wanting to stop some of this craziness that's going on, but long term, how can you build systems that would deter that sort of situation in the future?
Well, I think it's a great question. For me personally, people have said that, and I've read things about what I've said, and he talks about his crime. And in a way, that's true. I have. There's been other things I talked about as well. I'm all for an economic strategy moving forward. That's mm-hmm. Dean Wilson's big thing. He wants to head up
his master plan thing and all of that. Yeah.
Economic strategy, because it is important. Where do we want to see Del Norte go? We want the best for our county because why? We live here, and that's what I love about local government. It's bottom up. Okay, we're not 5,000 miles away and we're making rules on where you live. I live here.
Yeah.
I live in District 2. So the problems that I see are in my neighborhood and the things that I see. And that's what's so nice about local government is we can address things that happen locally. So as far as an economic strategy and where we're headed, in order to know where you want to go, you got to know where you're at. Mm-hmm. And so we start with the issues before us right now and those challenges. So I think that's a great thing. Fixing potholes. Linda Sutter, she's running. That's her big thing. Is the potholes are as big as Texas. Is what she said the other day. And she's got a point. Mm-hmm. Do I want to fix the potholes in this county? Yes.
Yeah. I know you'd mentioned also lighting. That's a big thing. That's a big thing out here, especially
of course,
just
yes.
lighting in neighborhoods.
Going around sometimes, and it was just the way it happened. The sun was setting in January, and I'm out door to door, and I'm like trying to get back to the truck before dark, but I'm still knocking on doors, and the sun's going down. And that was actually some of the, I said, what would you like to see happen in this district in your neighborhood? And they go, look outside.
Yeah.
Our kids have to come inside right now because we have no lighting.
Right.
So things like that, It's a big deal right now to have a seat at the table with this offshore wind project that everyone is concerned about. Mm-hmm. What I said in my last debate at the AOR was, these things are all great, They're all good. I'm for having an economic strategy. I'm for fixing the potholes. I'm for making this place attractive to tourists. You know, I would love to see, because we get a lot of money infused into our county and into our town with tourism. I'm for all these things. These things are all good, but you have to have it safe first. This place has to be safe. When I go up and down the streets, and I won't name them, but in my district, I've gone up and down streets, and went on one street, I've heard 4 different stories of break-ins. Yeah. One person has been broken into 3 different times. Unfortunately, she has medical ailments that require a higher level of care. So she's gone from her home. When she comes back, it's been ransacked because they watch her home. They know this condition exists. They know that eventually she's going to have to be taken out and she'll be gone for a week or 2. Wow. And when she comes back, it's been completely gone through. Oh. I mean, does that make a person feel safe in their own home?
No, of course not.
So if you can't even feel safe here, if you can't bring your overdose numbers down, if you can't address the drug issues, if you can't address all of those things, then what makes a tourist think, you know what, let's go to Del Norte County and visit?
Right.
Well,
right.
Didn't you know they're number 2 in the state for opioid overdoses? Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that's where people want to be, and I don't think that's where we want to be. So, yes, crime's a big deal for me. As far as enforcing and law enforcement, drug task force, all those things, obviously I speak that language.
Yeah, right.
That's the world I come from. But I'm also wanting to improve this county in so many other ways. I'm for Dean Wilson and his strategy. I want to know more about that. As far as the tri-agency goes, I'm learning everything there is to know about that, which, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert in that field.
I don't know if anybody could.
I know.
Yeah.
And that was the first question I got at the debate. And I'm like, I kind of made a pun. I made a joke. I said, I thought I was going to get hard questions.
Yeah.
And so I'm not really prepared to speak in depth on the tri-agency. It's kind of a mystery to me. But my understanding is that it can have good and bad. Obviously, this county's been dealing with the bad portions and repaying some money that have been either squandered, misused, whatever the case may be. But I think, for everyone to come together on issues to make the county better, it could be a good thing. It just needs to be managed appropriately.
It is 10:32. You're tuned to KFUG Community Radio, and Amanda Doctor and myself, Paul Kritz. We're speaking with Rivers Drown, candidate for Del Norte County Supervisor, District 2. So what's your stance on Proposition 1? Because I'm still trying to just sort of understand what this will do. This seems like something that is right in your wheelhouse.
Well, in that, you're right. That's a proposition.
And that was was that a term from the Nimitz wheelhouse? Was that?
It was. Well, we actually use chart room.
Okay.
But,
that's okay. Cool.
But you know what? Yeah, that wheelhouse works as well. Proposition 1. That's something that is an interesting one. I'm
still trying to get my head around it.
I was too. I did the research both for the pros and the cons. And, I really had to find myself, after the research, I was trying to open-minded, like, what is this all about? And at the end of all of that research, I kind of found myself personally at the con side of it.
Okay. And
the reason why is because it's cashing in something like $6.8 billion. I could be off on that number, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 billion in bonds and that sort of thing, which would require Californians to repay for 30 years on that. And it's also taking a bunch of money from the counties in order to get these things going. Wow. Now, what they're saying is that, we want to build shelters for our homeless veterans and all those sorts of things. And is that a good thing? Of course it is. But taking money from the counties, I don't think is the answer, because even the mental health experts in the field are against this proposition. They're even saying no, because what we have going right now is it either works or it is working or is going to work. We're working in a direction where we're moving in a positive direction. If this were to happen, then all of that's done.
Wow, okay.
And so I kind of have to listen to the voices of the people that boots are on the ground. And if they're saying that they're against it, then that kind of makes sense to me. I'm going to trust their expertise and say, you know what, that makes sense. I don't think it's a good idea for us to be losing all of the money that we have to move in a direction that helps these people. Just so that the state can have more money. And we've already seen what the state does with money. They're saying that, cash out $6 billion worth of bonds. but they're estimating that it could cost upwards of 10.
Wow.
So almost double.
Now, this is an interesting question. I mean, starting, at least in my memory, starting with AB 109, it really seemed to highlight a disconnect, a very real dysfunctional relationship Del Norte County and perhaps all rural counties might have nowadays with Sacramento. How could you address, being a former state employee yourself, how would you address that?
You're saying in regards to...
I mean, just in regards that it seems like Sacramento doesn't care about us. And throws
us
or understand us exactly,
Yeah.
and then puts things like in terms of AB 109 and some of these other puts a lot of mandates on the plate for counties across the state to sort of take the pressure off themselves to kind of do their jobs. It feels like to me. So maybe I'm not the right person to even ask this question, but how could you shepherd a better relationship or a more understanding relationship between Del Norte and Sacramento?
And I think what you're saying is absolutely right. I think we in Del Norte County were up at the very tip top of the state. I've talked to people in my job.
You have to explain where we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't realize that they think San Francisco and Sacramento is Northern California.
Keep driving.
And I always laugh and I say, "Do you realize there's 7 more hours of California?" Wait, what? Where are? What? I had to look on a map to see where you were.
And we're not even on all of those.
Yeah, exactly. So, we are up in paradise as far as I'm concerned, but we do get paid in with that brush because technically we still are California. And so many policies and laws and rules that probably work or would be a good idea for a city.
Sure.
San
Jose, you got it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it doesn't really help us. It doesn't affect us. And yet it's still the law. And so I think for me, it would be one of the things where the supervisors, they make trips down to Sacramento to talk to lawmakers and these people
There's
on a
the
regular
Council
basis.
of Rural Counties and things
Sure.
that we have a seat on, all of that.
When they ask you, a supervisor, let's say, when they ask a supervisor, hey, what's going on in your county? What do you guys need help with? The question I have is, what are we telling them? What are we saying? Oh, are we saying, we want more money for this, or we want more money for that program, or this or that? And I'm not saying this happens. I'm just saying my question is, what are we telling them? What I would tell them is, look, we need help as it relates to our opioid overdose problem that we have. It's not a secret to anyone that we are number 2 in the state as being the worst. And my thought is this, excuse me, what I've told people is California, we are the best at all of the worst things. And it feels like that.
Like what sorts of things?
We've gone the wrong direction in so many things. Well, for example, the opioid overdoses, as I've already stated.
Right.
Top of the list. What about the AB 2372?
Right.
That lifted the threshold of felony theft from $400, which it has been since 1982. Did we go a little bit? No, we over doubled
it. Yeah.
Again, we went the wrong direction. What has all of that done? Well, of course, basically that gave carte blanche to everyone who's a thief. Well, now I can steal twice as much.
Right.
And I've read stories where, people go into backpacks into these stores, and they actually have a calculator. They're
adding up what they can get.
How
wow.
much so that they stay under. And I'm not kidding. These are stories I've read by store managers have caught them going around, and then it's in their backpack, and then they walk straight out the door.
What's the other proposition too that changed the misdemeanor?
So Prop 47.
That's it.
And then shortly after that was Prop 57.
Okay.
So all of these propositions, and this has been a big part, and this is where we're starting to get into the long-term goals.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've talked about my short-term goals. Now we're getting into the long-term goals. Would this even happen during my first term? Don't know. But I know there's traction for repealing Prop 47 even as we speak. California Congressman Kevin Kiley, I believe, he basically he signed his position basically stating that we're going to repeal this proposition. And he had about 4 district attorneys that were there to speak too. This was just on YouTube not too long ago. I think we need somewhere in the neighborhood of about 546,000 signatures to get this on the ballot in November.
Wow.
He's boasting that we've already got about over 400,000.
Wow, okay.
So I look at that and go, wow, that tells me that the California voter has realized after 10, 12, 14 years of these terrible laws, dangerous laws, that they're ready to see some change in this area. To me, and to many people that oppose these things, we know that this was like a social experiment. It was, specifically with prison, because I was there, I watched this unfold in real time. There was a big push to minimize populations in prison.
Yeah.
Overcrowding, it's inhumane, and torture and all these things. So California, basically, they were given a deadline. You have this date to have your populations down to this. And so what did they do?
Well,
they minimized what were felonies, and they changed them to misdemeanors.
And passed off a lot of the responsibility to counties, and did all of these sorts of things.
That's
right?
exactly
Yeah.
right. That you hit the nail on the head. That's where I was headed. So these guys, all of a sudden, now they're not in for 3 strikes, you're out. Now one of those strikes became a misdemeanor. So guess what? They go to committees, and boom, they're out. This is what I spoke about in the debate that we had. I kind of get a little bit upset when California wants to throw this back. Lawmakers throw this back in the California voters' face all the time. Well, Prop 47 was passed by the California voter, but like I said before, right? Does anyone remember why? It was because of the way it was titled on the ballot. The title was "Safer Schools and Neighborhoods."
Oh, jeez.
And as I've said before, who wouldn't vote for that?
Right.
And if you didn't do your research and understand the pork that's in that whole law, you think, well, I want safer neighborhoods. I want safer schools for my kids. So they vote yes. But that's thrown in our face. We were lied to.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time unless you do your research. And so now we're realizing, oh my gosh, are you telling me that a guy who's got ecstasy on him, which the date rape drug, it used to be a felony, but now it's a misdemeanor? Can you explain why that is a good idea? These are some of the laws and rules that these changed under these propositions.
A friend of mine who's in media actually just stood by and had to stand and watch as somebody smashed his car window and stole all of the video equipment in the back. He was in San Francisco, and his car pulled up, and these 4 guys jumped out, and he just stood there and had to watch him. Couldn't raise a finger to do anything because he'd get his butt kicked, or worse. But just could. All right, one of the smash and grabs. That's it. That's me. Okay.
Well, and I have a question for you. You're in this business. I'm not. I can only assume that this this equipment is expensive. Was it over $950 that they stole?
That I don't know. Probably. Probably.
I could imagine. I'm looking at this
2 of these
switchboard.
mics would be more than that.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So my point...
No. These are all super cheap microphones we use here. There's no reason to be concerned about that.
So my point is this, $950. Now, according to the law, that's a felony.
Yeah.
If it's over that, you think they're going to go to prison? Absolutely not. That's what happens with Prop 57. These laws their crimes were decriminalized to a misdemeanor. They get out. Now, here's the thing. They go back out, they recommit those crimes, which before sent them to prison because they were felonies. Now they're misdemeanors. So even if they get held accountable, they don't go back to prison.
Right.
Where do they go?
I don't know.
Now they go to jail.
Oh, right. Locally
our county
to jail.
And we're okay with overcrowding our county jails.
That's fine.
But we're not okay with overcrowding our prisons.
Yeah,
it's
good
like
point.
the hypocrisy is so thick.
It seems like a shell game. Like they're just
really
trying to
is.
hide the responsibility from each other.
California wanted
Kick the
to...
can. The buck no longer stops here. We
Yeah,
just
no,
kick the can.
Exactly. The prison system was told, look, minimize your numbers, and we want to see a reduction in recidivism. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And on paper, CDCR, it looks great. Look, our numbers are down because, we've kicked these guys out. And recidivism's great, too, because they're not coming back.
This is a hypothetical question then for you. Do you think, and this is not so much for the candidate, but it's for the person who retired from 25 years in CDCR and law enforcement. Excuse me. Was there a better way to affect those changes? Like instead of just, we want to address recidivism, we want to get population down, instead of just not taking as many people and kicking people out, was there a better, maybe perhaps even a more difficult sort of path to take in which you really genuinely helped people after they're released from prison?
There probably was, but that was so far above my pay grade that that's something.
Nowadays that's left to nonprofits and prison rights groups and activists and things to pick up that challenge afterwards.
Yeah, I think what happened was the deadline, and I can't remember what that deadline was. But when you're faced with a deadline by the California Supreme Court, and they say do this by, you then are painted into a box where you don't have 5 years to do studies on what are effective ways that we can put our heads together and come up with a good way to do this and keep neighborhoods safe.
Yeah.
You're told do this by then. So they go, okay,
Yeah.
we'll make it real simple, and we'll change felonies into misdemeanors, and that'll eliminate these amount of people. And so what that did was it got them to the number, and probably even more so, in a very short amount of time.
Right.
And it was okay with them because they wanted to look good on paper, and they wanted to not be in contempt of the California Supreme Court. Nobody wants that. So it made them look good right away. Here's the deal. Crime is the easiest thing to fix. It is.
How so? Just by what? Locking people up? What?
It's the easiest thing to fix. However, here's the problem. And I'll speak to California specifically. These propositions and these laws, California's made it very difficult now, because you don't just, okay, so let's say by November we have enough votes and we repeal Prop 47. Okay, cool, victory. But will all of these other propositions that were sort of attached to that, these assembly bills, will all of those instantly get repealed as well?
Right.
Is it because they branch off of that? Or do we have to repeal each one? Okay, well, we got that one, now we got to go for this one. I don't know that I actually have the answer for that.
Yeah.
These are things that are going on in my mind. I think ending Prop 47 is a good start, and I think it's a move in the right direction. But to your original question, were there ways that we could have done it better? I think so.
Yeah.
But we'll never know because we never had time to do the research.
Right. Wow. 10:46 the time. Oh, I am wearing my glasses. Why am I squinting? 10:46 the time. There we go. You're tuned to KFUG Community Radio. We're speaking with Rivers Drown candidate for District 2 Supervisor. All right, so we've spent so much time talking about crime, law enforcement, and it seems like everything you're talking about really boils down to just quality of life in Del Norte.
Yeah.
What else needs to be addressed? I mean, and I know you're coming from a law enforcement sort of stance, and that's what you've got, and that's what you bring to the table. But other things that we can do in Del Norte to make it better here.
Well, I think starting there, you begin to make this place a little bit more attractive. To who? You make it attractive to doctors.
Yeah.
Who want to move here. Nursing staff. You make it attractive to tourism. When you, and again, and I know this is my Achilles heel here, I do kind of always go back to the crime thing.
Well, that's not an Achilles heel. It's just your point of view. That's what you bring to the table.
And it is what
It's
I talk about
your
a lot.
area of expertise.
There you
Exactly.
go. Yes.
And so that obviously that's where I'm comfortable. But to me, when I look around our community, it's like this is how do we fix this? How do we fix that? Well, to me, it's like if you fix crime and you make it safer, those other issues begin to get fixed. When you have tourists here at the campground, at the S curves, my brother-in-law, he gets a spot there every 4th of July with his trailer. So we go down there and watch the fireworks. And one year, I think 2 years ago, this couple was here next door to us with their RV and their kids, and they were from Arizona. And we went over, and my brother-in-law, and we went into their coach because it was so gorgeous. We're like, we're going to see the inside of that thing. And so, oh yeah, come on in, invited us in. We got to meet him. It was really cool. But he told us a story of like, he goes, I didn't have a padlock or anything for my kids' bikes. And so I took this really long steel cable and I just ran it like a spider web through all their frames, spokes, handlebars. I tied it in the tightest knot I could. And I just thought, okay, they'll be fine.
Wow.
They woke up the next day, their kids' bikes are gone.
Right there in the
right
RV
there in the
park?
park.
Wow.
And you're thinking, someone all night took the time to quietly unravel this spider web of a steel cable through all of these kids' bikes, and they took them all. And my brother and I looked at each other, and we looked at this man and his wife, and we said, on behalf of this county, we apologize.
Wow.
Because this isn't us. This isn't our county. This isn't who we are. But unfortunately, we do have a high crime rate here, and that does happen quite often. I want to see that changed.
Yeah.
Do you think that guy is ever going to come back here? I don't know. He might, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
He didn't say he wasn't, but that's kind of stuff right there. I think those areas can start to get fixed when we start dealing with our crime and holding people accountable. And, you know, like my opponent said, well, what's he want to do? Just throw everyone in jail? It's already overcrowded. I know that. That's another heavy lift.
Yeah.
Those are other problems that we are looking at right now with this ad hoc committee that they're on. And so we got a lot on our plates, and these are a lot of serious challenges that are before us. But I think common sense rules the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I live my life. I tell people, look, you either like me or you don't. I don't really care. I'm going to speak common sense. I'm a man of faith, and so that's where a lot of my ideas and my directions come from. But at the end of the day, I don't want to tell people what I think they want to hear. I don't want to live my life like that. I don't want to try to remember what I told them and then remember what I told them. You know, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to tell people what I think the problems are, and then I'm going to rule by common sense. If it makes sense and we have the money, then let's do it. These potholes need fixed over here. Do we have the money? Yeah. Well, then move it. Mm-hmm. Reallocate it, and let's make it happen. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. But if it doesn't make sense, and it's not going to make the community better, and it's not going to make people happier, then why are we going to do it? You know, I tell people, one of the things that I have on my card is limited government. I believe in limited government. I tell people all the time, we don't need the government. The government needs us.
Well, the government is us.
Now, I say this tongue in cheek, and what you just said is very true. And the reason why I say that is because, look, okay, a tsunami hits and wipes out our harbor. Okay, we're going to need the government. Come, we need your help. Mm-hmm. Okay. The erosion we're seeing on Pebble Beach and that whole road closed off. We're going to need some help with that. Del Norte County can't even afford to fix that whole project on our own. Yeah. So, yes, those things make sense. But to have the government, or the Sacramento specifically, throw out, you know, all these programs and all this and all that, and monies and that sort of thing for stuff that they want to see happen, it kind of leads us back to what we were talking about earlier. Look, you're not here, we are. I feel like what we did with like Measure S and Measure R, that's us taking care of our community, finding a way to do that. Now, I'm not for high taxes. Mm-hmm. Typically, a tax increase, I'd be against. But would I rather see a 1% increase in taxes for Measure R and Measure S so that we can address our own problems here locally rather than depend upon big government? Absolutely, that makes sense. So these are my points. My points are common sense, governing. Does it make sense? If it doesn't, it's a no vote. If it hurts people, it's a no vote. If it helps and if it makes sense, it's a yes vote. And it really comes down to kind of the ones and zeros for me in that area.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, dear.
I just feel like common sense is very cultural, and because there seems to be this huge disconnect between Capitol Hill and here locally, we should just set up a summer camp where we invite all like the state assembly persons and Congress people and have them up here and be like, come visit the beautiful Del Norte County. Except when we get here, we freeze their assets and they have to learn how to survive on minimum wage and find housing and get a job and get their medicine and then really see what we're dealing with. And maybe that'll differentiate our communication with them there.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there ways? I was surprised just to learn in this round of electioneering that Del Norte County has a budget of $200 million, which just surprised the hell out of them. What? Are there ways the Del Norte County government is too big in your estimation?
I don't know. I think I saw the same report you did with the Treasury.
Yeah.
And I think the Treasurer's doing a great job in managing that money responsibly. She's looking for outside help to even make that money grow, certain portions of it. I loved her presentation she did at the Board of Supervisors meeting a few meetings ago. I think she's doing a great job there. I don't think we're too big. I think we just have to make sure we manage what we have appropriately.
Right.
You know, and this is where everyone, I've had aha moments asked of me, well, what do you think about the tri-agency and how they, mismanaged all that money and, tax dollars had to repay and this and that. I tell them, I don't know.
Yeah.
If I don't know, I'm going to tell you. I just don't know enough about that whole situation.
Right.
I hear different versions from different people. Are those coming from slanted biased.
You don't even know
opinions.
enough to judge that.
Yeah.
I don't know enough to ask the questions either about the tri-agency.
Exactly.
With people,
So,
right?
I mean, I don't know. Were people hurt in that? Probably. Was there some backdoor deals? Maybe some agendas? That's gonna happen with anytime there's human beings involved in something.
yeah.
You're gonna have that.
Right.
But as it relates to the monies that we have in our coffers, with this county and in this town, I think we just have to make sure we manage it appropriately, and just do our due diligence in those areas.
Wow. It is 10:55. So, final thoughts. Wrap us up. Take us home here. What would you like to leave our listeners with?
Final thoughts. Well, again, I just want to thank everybody for the support. District 2, March 5th. If you would vote for me, I'd definitely appreciate your vote. There's things that I don't know, but I'm going to be learning very rapidly, very quickly. But there's things that I do know. And again, just to restate, I deal in common sense. And I think for the most part, I would probably say 90+% of the people I've talked to door to door in my district, they see the world through the same lens I do. And we just want to be safe. We want to have a good neighborhood. We want this place to be safe for our kids. And I may be a little old fashioned, but I mean, I think safety and common sense rules the day, and that's how I live my life. So I appreciate your vote March 5th.
I can't argue with the logic that if you address these sorts of things, a lot of other things can follow along
absolutely.
behind it. Yeah. Rivers Drive. Amanda, anything left?
Hey, thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in and sharing with us and being the last candidate. This is nice.
I want to thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Never done something like this before, so this is really cool, and thanks for all you guys do.
Oh, wow. Right on. Thank you. I appreciate it. And should you be elected, this goes out to anybody. If you're elected, expect we'll be calling and having you back on and talking more anyway.
Outstanding.
So,
Outstanding.
all right. Rivers Drown, candidate, supervisor, District 2, Del Norte. That, of course, is coming up. That vote is coming up the 5th, which is what, a week from today?
Yeah.
Is that where we are? It is Tuesday,
That's
right?
how time works.
That is how time works. Wow. All right. Well, time for some Jimi Hendrix right around this little PSA here about the first 5 Del Norte. You're tuned to KFUG Community Radio.